Suicide Squad is terrible. Made you look though, I was talking about the first Suicide Squad. As for the new one, well, let's just talk about it. So if you know me, you know how I feel about, like, Suicide Squad as an entity. I don't know very much about the comic books, but since 2016 when the first Suicide Squad movie released, I've never really understood the obsession with this part of the DC universe on film. It almost kind of felt like Warner Brothers were putting more energy into Suicide Squad spin-offs and sequels than they were movies devoted to Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman. And I always kind of put it down to desperation to have their own Guardians of the Galaxy, as that's kind of what Suicide Squad 2016 felt like, a Guardians of the Galaxy mockbuster. Obviously, much like the Justice League movie, it was the product of a lot of studio interference, and post-Justice League 2017, Warner Brothers have adopted a very different mentality towards how they make these movies, with more of like a filmmaker focus, making these more stylized standalone movies. Now, what kind of gave more validation for my kind of point about Suicide Squad being Warner Brothers' attempt at aping the Guardians of the Galaxy series was the fact that the second James Gunn was fired by Marvel, albeit temporary, Warner Brothers poached him for a Suicide Squad movie, and it just felt like, yeah, this is what they wanted from the start. Now, also, if you know me, you'll know that I'm not very satisfied with the fact that rather than working with the foundations laid down by films like Man of Steel, Batman and Superman, and Zack Snyder's Justice League, Warner Brothers are opting to keep things completely standalone and really separate themselves from the original foundations of the DC Extended Universe. I think, you know, like them or not, make good on that, follow it through, you know? So that is really why I wasn't all that hyped about the Suicide Squad. I saw a lot of the marketing, and it looked like a step in the right direction. It looked like this was very much what a Suicide Squad movie should be, but I wasn't all that excited. I was pleased to see, you know, there's a director focus going on now. Warner Brothers are allowing their filmmakers much more creative liberties. That's how you do it. It has definitely yielded better results so far. But it's harder for me to get excited about the DC films when it's kind of like we're just burying, like, the major players of this universe. It kind of makes it feel empty. But with that being said, the Suicide Squad released, I heard really great things about it from friends and from critics and stuff, and I figured, okay, I'll log into my HBO Max account and give it a watch. And I'm certainly glad that I did, because it is terrific. As far as DC films going forward go with this new kind of strategy, this is a step in the right direction. This is a good movie, and, like, I'm glad that they're kind of keeping to a very quintessentially James Gunn movie here, going for that R rating, and it comes together really, really well, and I think James Gunn was the man for the job for this one, as he's an excellent filmmaker that took advantage of absolutely everything he had at his disposal with this movie. So, like, in scenes and, like, action sequences, he just takes advantage of absolutely every set piece possible. If there's an opportunity for some exciting and creative cinematography or camera movements, like, they went full force with this movie in making it look really striking and very stylized. To a point where it's like, there's a point in the third act where they make use of a reflection, and I was just kind of like, okay, now you're just showing off. So it's like, for how stylized this is, and for how confident the filmmaking is here, which is fantastic, you need some substance to back up that style. And fortunately, the Suicide Squad has that in spades. Once again, James Gunn, he's known for good character work, and the same applies very much here. The character work is great. I want to try and refrain from comparisons to Guardians of the Galaxy, because while they are James Gunn comic book movies, they're made for very different purposes, but it is quite clear to see that this is much more James Gunn's own movie than it is like an entry into a greater cinematic universe with a lot more restrictions on it. And I think the characterization here is all the better and less safe for it. A continuous theme throughout this movie is patriotism. Task Force X, the Suicide Squad, are operating in the name of national security in this movie, and they're working under Amanda Waller. And there's a fantastic character dynamic between Rick Flag and Peacemaker. And I don't want to give away too much, but these are two very patriotic characters. But they both have very different ideologies as far as patriotism goes. It's like the difference between total loyalty to your country, warts and all, and being critical of your own country because you want it to be the best it can be. The film doesn't have a huge amount to say about that, but what it has is effective and pretty simple, and it makes for a really satisfying character dynamic, particularly between those two, but also Bloodsport has a great dynamic with the other characters as well. I think if I had to pick favorite characters in this movie, it would have to be between Bloodsport, Peacemaker, and Rick Flag, all for very different reasons. There's a superb dichotomy between that trio, and all of the actors involved have spectacular chemistry together. But you know what? I also really loved David Dastmalchian as the Polka Dot Man. That man is like the MVP of both Marvel and DC, as it seems that every time there's a comic book movie roll up for grabs, he's there. I think that's really awesome, and the guy deserves a lot of appreciation because he always gives it 100%, and he's always great. And yeah, David Dastmalchian, a lot of respect for that guy. And I absolutely love what he brought to the role of Polka Dot Man. And it's kind of crazy just to see Polka Dot Man is in this movie. He made it to a live-action motion picture. And he's taken seriously enough as a character, but he's still, like, this film does not shy away from their comic book roots. All of these characters are immediately recognizable as who they're supposed to be, from characterization to even just the costumes are just on point this time around. Absolutely loved Peter Capaldi as the Thinker and the role that he played in this story. I really liked the dynamic between the former Suicide Squad members, the ones that were in the 2016 movie, and how they still kind of know each other. Like Harley and Captain Boomerang, really liked their dynamic. King Shark, I had a lot of fun with. He's very much the sort of the big brutish character archetype with, you know, like the heart of gold. But I really enjoyed his screen presence. He was a lot of fun. He's cute, isn't he? He's kind of the one you're supposed to really like. He's the very marketable character. But I had a lot of fun with him, especially when things get kind of violent as well. Ratcatcher 2, I didn't expect to really care about. I never knew who Ratcatcher 2 was in the comics, but really enjoyed her character here. And I tell you what's a big surprise is, if you know me, you know that the DC Extended Universe version of Harley Quinn really doesn't do it for me. In Suicide Squad 2016, they leaned into the whole, oh, it's the cute couple of Gotham thing with the Joker and Harley Quinn, and really botched that relationship between the two characters. But they also really played up kind of the sexuality and how she was filmed and how she was dressed and stuff. Then moving into Birds of Prey, they went full force into the sort of girl boss kind of a route. And, I thought she was way too present in that movie. Obviously, it's a Harley Quinn movie, but I think she's too much to be like the featuring character. Moving over into this one, she has arguably the smallest role out of her roles in the 3 movies, but I think it's really beneficial as she works as a sort of wild card character, but also this is by far the best that Harley Quinn has been in live action. It's always been kind of frustrating to me because I think Margot Robbie is a really good actress and a really good casting choice for Harley Quinn, but it's just been the way that character's been handled and written in the DC Extended Universe hasn't really cut the cheese for me. And I still don't know how to feel about the fact that they've really skipped a lot of what I consider to be the best Harley Quinn stories, being the ones with her and the Joker. We only really got one movie with that in it, and it lasted about 10 minutes, and it was completely botched. We didn't really get any kind of inclination of like the abusive side to the you know, that couple. They found a way to kind of weave it into her story off screen in Birds of Prey, and you know what, I think it's justified enough. It works. It's just, I don't know, I would like to go back and explore more of Harley Quinn with the Joker, but okay. There is a monologue, though, for Harley Quinn in this movie, which is basically, it gives me everything I want out of that character. And yeah, as I've said, this is the absolute best of Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn in this movie right here, where she just gets to be Harley Quinn. James Gunn and everyone involved with this movie clearly loves these characters and cares about them, and didn't obsess too much about changing them in this adaptation. Like, they're all presented as you know these characters, but it plays out in a really clever, really well-written, and really well-filmed movie. And just, that's it really. It's about as good as it's gonna get. As far as a Suicide Squad movie goes, this sets a new standard. This is as good of a The Suicide Squad movie as you could possibly ask for. And it is in every way what I wanted to see back in 2016. Like, if I wasn't already jaded by that movie and like Birds of Prey and stuff like that, I would have been buzzing for this. And you know what? I'm really glad that I, got to be pleasantly surprised by this. I wasn't expecting it to be a bad movie, but not one that I would necessarily really connect with. But this right here is damn good stuff. Now, there is, of course, another Suicide Squad movie that I'd really like to see. I don't know what I'm going to think about it, but I'd really like to see it, and that is the Aircut of the original 2016 Suicide Squad. David A. has been very vocal saying that, yeah, there's a very different version of this film out there, which is his one, and that basically Warner Brothers pulled a Justice League on him and his original cut, mandating a lot of reshoots, and yeah, basically it was a completely different film in the end. David A. has really disowned that 2016 version, and I don't blame him, because that was a fucking dumpster fire of a movie. Now, the thing is, given that there's pretty much nothing in that movie that I liked, not all of that could surely be reshoots, so I am a bit dubious as to how much I would enjoy the Aircut. But there are certainly things that sound promising about it, such as, David A. has said that the Joker and Harley's abusive relationship was much more present in that one. It was properly represented, much closer to what it was in Batman the Animated Series. And it's like, I'd like to see it just for that, to be honest. But there's also more that sounds very intriguing, such as Steppenwolf making his first DC Extended Universe appearance at the final battle, as opposed to Incubus, the Joker kind of going against the Suicide Squad. And it didn't have that Guardians of the Galaxy-inspired pop soundtrack either, so it does sound like it is quite a different treatment, and it does sound a lot better. I really want to see it, and like John Cena recently commented on it at the premiere event, and he kind of just said, like, if Warner Brothers have access to it, they should absolutely release it. It's what the fans want, they should listen to the fans. And you know what, yeah, if it's there, and it's no trouble, please release the Aircut. But I understand it's not going to happen this year, and it's probably not going to happen even next year. If it's going to happen, it's going to take a little bit. They're not going to do it so shortly after this reboot. Like, it wouldn't make sense to do this soft reboot and then suddenly dig up the old version for everyone else and say, actually, the original vision we had was fine, and we didn't really need to reboot it, it's just that we fucked it up so badly the first time. Nah. I mean, I think as it stands, James Gunn's vision of the Suicide Squad, I think, is much more compatible with my own ideas of what these are supposed to be than David Ayer's. I would just really love to see his take. I would really love to see that play out. Then there's some other interesting tidbits. James Gunn said that he originally wanted an evil Superman to be the villain of the Suicide Squad. It was like a very early idea he had. I'm just gonna say this, the evil Superman idea is played out to fuck, and just, I prefer seeing Superman as this beacon of virtue and hope and everything like that. But there would be a way they could actually play off of some existing material within the DC Extended Universe in a way that I think would actually please a huge amount of people. You following me here? So, Zack Snyder's Justice League, yeah, we're going there. It did set up anti-life Superman working under Darkseid. And it does it in a way that's a bit more intriguing than the typical evil Superman stuff. There's a bit more to it than that, it's a bit more layered. What you could do is have The Suicide Squad 2, once again, directed by James Gunn, with The Suicide Squad up against anti-life Superman and an army of parademons. You see where I'm going with this? You would basically have a really awesome Suicide Squad sequel, and in the process, restore the Snyderverse. Not in the way that it was originally intended. This is not the Snyderverse that was, planned all those years ago. But it would at least work with the story that they've actually started, I don't need them to fully blown do the Snyderverse exactly as it was always intended. Exactly. But I would like them to work with the groundwork that has been laid down, as opposed to just making everything standalone, because now we're just left with a lot of open ends, which I think need to be dealt with. And I think that could be a really great compromise. But I also have other ideas for how they could compromise a Snyderverse and have it their own way for the foreseeable future of the DC films. And that is to do with the Flash movie. I will talk about that at a later date. But as for the rest of you guys, The Suicide Squad, have you seen it? I, for one, loved it, but what did you guys think? Comment below and discuss, and as always, if you enjoyed this video and you want to see more like it, hit subscribe, hit the like button, and in the description below are links to my social media, as well as the much more important Patreon, where you can just, please check out the Patreon and give me money. A handful of folks that did that in the $10 tier are Marcus Ward, Cyrus the Skeptic, Biotin Arts, and Mr. SP. Thank you so much. And as for the rest of you guys, thanks for watching, and have a great day.